No, dude, like this, Kamren exclaimed before launching into a series of quick ducks and poetic sweeps. He moved in rhythm with the music with an ease that I was envious of. Next to him, Aximili was in his strangely chimeric human form, tried to copy the movements that Kamren had done. He was less than successful. While his arms almost resembled something vaguely like what Kamren had done, he seemed unable to focus on what his feet were doing at the same time, and his left heel crossed over his right foot, catching his toes, and he toppled to the ground with an aggressive expulsion of air. "Oh shit, Max, you good?" Kamren rushed over to offer him a hand up. "I am not sure I am ready for this human dance," he said, with an edge of annoyance to his voice. "We should get some rest so we can focus on the mission at hand instead of fooling around," he snapped at Kamren. "No way, Max, this is very important," he argued back, trying to lighten the mood. "Almost as important as the big mission tomorrow." I glanced at the clock. 1:13 a.m. That's right. Tomorrow. Mere hours ago, we had nearly destroyed the planet and caused a mass extinction event, and now, here we are, back home. I was sitting on the couch with a book balanced on my thighs, pretending to read, but truly just watching Kamren try to get Aximili up to speed on what he needed to know before the big dance. Life is surreal. "This has no bearing on the future of war and your planet," Aximili scolded Kamren. While I am no expert, it seemed Kamren had pushed Aximili in a way that he didn't want to be pushed. Kamren just smiled his crooked smile and grabbed Aximili's hand, pulling him awkwardly to his feet. "Come on, man, you have to lighten up a little." "I believe you may need to take things more seriously, Kamren. This is unbecoming of a warrior." Aximili, having been hauled up, had found himself standing too close to Kamren and was giving the impression that he was in his face. Combined with the words, I knew how that would land with Kamren. Kamren opened his mouth to reply, his eyebrows drawn together in anger. "It's math," I interjected. They both turned to stare. That statement had come out of left field. The tension wasn't completely gone, but I had made my opening. I shut my book with a gentle thud and let it slide onto the couch as I stood up. Kamren's shoulders were still drawn up, like the hair on his polar bear morph before he charged into a fight. Aximili, on the other hand, was standing tense, with no fluidity to his body. I physically butted in between them, using my body placement to create distance between them before turning to Aximili, who looked nothing short of utterly baffled. Quickly, I used my flattened palm to bring up his elbows. Stand up with a straight spine, shoulders pulled back and down. He attempted to follow my instructions, and when he got close, I nodded. I spared a glance back at Kamren, who had drawn a little further away from us, hazel eyes clouded over with a dark irritation, but watching to see where this would go. "Now there's traditionally male and female roles, and I'm going to teach you the male part." He nodded to me and looked very unsure, but he was trying to follow. I placed his hand and then adjusted his arm up until his right hand rested on my shoulder blade, and put my arm around his shoulders before grabbing his hand and swiveling my palm into his until the placement was correct. It was surprising how this sort of detail bubbles out of some deep recess of experience. Listen to the music for a moment, and I paused, listening to whatever it was that Kamren had put on. It's a 4/4 signature, as most songs are. That means 4 beat per measure, and the measure is repeating, so count it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. I watched his eyes unfocus as he listened for a minute, and that Andalite brain, it was made for this. He snapped onto it and looked back at me, ready for the next challenge. On 1, you step forward with your left. 2, to the side with your right, and then back with your right, and finally, side with your left. 4, close your legs, return to your standing position for now. Ready? His expression said no, but he said, "I am prepared." So I gently pushed him backwards into it, back leading him. We took it one step at a time at first, but after 2 rounds he was marching with precision. "Good. Now let's change the steps," I told him as I was already pushing him a bit faster. I felt him lean heavily into my hand and grab the back of my shirt a couple times as he became unstable. Slow step, quick, quick, slow, quick, quick. Don't forget to count. It was like snapping on a light bulb. Math was easy. Counting was just part of math. Once he settled into a rhythm, I started to lead him in a slow spiral while we did that, his face panic-stricken. Calculate the trajectory. It's the same steps. You're only adjusting the angle to create a circle. He adjusted his stride, and 2 steps later, he was snapped onto some invisible guide that any ballroom coach would kill to achieve, and for just a moment, we were in sync, genuinely dancing around the room. Once he was confident, I let my lead go and let him find his own way around. I saw Maitea in her human form leaning against the corner of the hallway entrance. She watched Aximili, and I could see her heterochromatic eyes, the hint of an absolute smile. It was strange seeing one eye that looked like mine and one that looked like Dylan's dart towards me. Her stance stiffened, and she quickly turned her gaze towards the ground. I pondered what private thoughts of my Teas I had accidentally intruded on. As I felt Aximili's human palm against my own, I ventured to guess, and my own mind wandered back to Dylan and the memory of our dance 65 million years ago. A small ping of anxiety stabbed through my chest as I thought about how she had hurried home. Maybe she would regret everything now that we were back in our own time, and that would cause a fracture in the team that I could ill afford. As the current song wound down, I slowed Aximili and then stepped away, releasing my hold on his hand. All dancing is basically variants of that. You learn the steps, and as long as you do them in time with the beat, you can adjust the angle of your limbs to achieve the form. As for musicality and style, well, Kamren's a much better dancer than I am, I stated, finally looking back at him properly, and he looked pensive. His hair was finally pulled back into a ponytail again, and he had showered and cleaned up after our romp through time. That all served to make him look younger, but there was still something dark that was pulling at his features. Kamren is right, you know. If we don't have things like this to hold on to, then what are we even fighting for? I turned my head to shoot Aximili a smile, and he ducked his head and looked like he wanted to argue, but he was suppressing the urge. Not always, I conceded, but when we can, we should find things like this to enjoy. The silence maintained for far too long, but the tension didn't feel as stifling. Good night to you three, I said as I stalked off towards my room, feeling like I was now impeding on something that at least Kamren and Aximili had to resolve. As I snagged my book and padded down the hall, I offered my Teo what I hoped was an understanding smile, just between us. And then I caught Aximili softly speaking, "Kamren, will you please show me again?"